The starship Nova glider glided silently through the void, a beacon of hope for interstellar cooperation. It was a rare collaboration between species, humans and the Averans, an advanced race known for their elegance and mysterious ways. The mission was clear: to explore the newly discovered Hilara system together. But for many on board, this was more than a mission. It was a chance to understand each other's worlds. When Tella stepped onto the ship, every human in the docking bay turned to stare. Her tall, willowy frame shimmered faintly under the overhead lights, her pale blue skin glowing softly, like moonlight on water. Her large, silver eyes scanned the crowd, calm and unblinking. She was dressed in a flowing suit of delicate fibers that seemed to ripple with her every move. Tella was not used to such attention. Among her own kind, she was unremarkable. But here, she could feel the humans' gazes lingering on her. She had read about humanity's fascination with appearances, their obsession with individuality and expression. For the Averans, such things were irrelevant. Her species valued logic and efficiency over beauty or emotion. Standing near the front of the group was Marcus, the ship's chief engineer. He was a broad-shouldered man with dark brown hair that always seemed a little messy, as if he'd just rolled out from under a console. His uniform bore faint smudges of oil, evidence of his constant tinkering with the ship's systems. Unlike the others, Marcus wasn't staring at Tella because of her appearance. He was more interested in her expression, or lack of it. She was perfect, almost too perfect. Her movements were precise, her gaze focused. Marcus had heard the Averans were a species without strong emotions, but now, standing just a few feet from one, he couldn't help but wonder what went on inside her mind. "Welcome aboard," Captain Harding said, stepping forward to greet her. The captain was a grizzled veteran with decades of experience, but even she seemed slightly unnerved by Tella's presence. "We're honored to have you join us, Observer Tella." Tella inclined her head slightly, a gesture her kind used to acknowledge respect. "Thank you, Captain. I look forward to observing your crew and learning from your ways." Her voice was soft, melodic, and carefully neutral. The captain introduced the senior crew, including Marcus, who gave her a nod and a friendly smile. Tella noticed that his smile was genuine, not the strained kind she had observed from the others. "Marcus will assist you if you need anything," the captain said. "He's one of the best engineers we've got." Marcus chuckled awkwardly. "I do my best," he said, scratching the back of his neck. Tella tilted her head, studying him. Humans used many unnecessary gestures, she noted. Scratching, smiling, shrugging. Her kind rarely moved unless it served a purpose. It fascinated her. As the tour began, Tella walked silently beside Marcus. The corridors of the Nova glider were bustling with activity. Crew members exchanging reports, technicians repairing panels, and scientists carrying out experiments. Everywhere she looked, humans were moving, talking, laughing. "Your species is busy," she said finally, her voice calm but curious. Marcus grinned. "Yeah, we don't sit still much. There's always something to do." Tella glanced at him, her silver eyes thoughtful. "Does this constant activity serve a purpose, or is it merely a distraction?" Marcus blinked, caught off guard by the question. "I guess both. We work because there's stuff that needs doing, but we also do things to enjoy ourselves. You know, relax. Relaxation." Tella repeated the word as if it were foreign. "Is it necessary for survival?" "Well, yeah," Marcus said with a laugh. "What's the point of survival if you don't enjoy the ride?" Tella said nothing, but her head tilted slightly, the only hint she was processing his words. Later, in the recreation lounge, Tella found herself surrounded by noise. Humans played games on holographic screens, while others sat in groups, laughing and sharing stories. One group was playing music, loud, rhythmic beats that made her sensitive ears twitch. She stood in the corner, observing everything. Marcus noticed her and walked over. "Not your kind of scene?" he asked, gesturing to the lively room. "It is overwhelming," she admitted. "Your species appears to find pleasure in chaos." Marcus chuckled. "That's one way to put it. It's just how we are. We thrive on connection, experiences, and sometimes, yeah, a bit of chaos." Tella turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "Your ways are strange to me. Yet, I feel there is something unique about them. Something I do not understand." Marcus shrugged. "Stick around. You might find we're not so strange after all." As the hours passed, Tella continued to watch the humans interact, her curiosity growing with every observation. She had come aboard the Nova glider expecting to study a primitive emotional species, but now she wasn't so sure. There was a depth to humanity she hadn't anticipated, a complexity that both intrigued and unsettled her. And so, Tella's journey among the humans began, with questions swirling in her mind and a strange, unfamiliar feeling stirring in her chest. Tella spent her first few days aboard the Nova glider observing, learning, and adjusting to human life. She had already discovered that humans were unlike any other species she had encountered. Their behaviors, emotional responses, physical expressions fascinated her. But one thing stuck out more than anything: reproduction. The topic had come up during a casual conversation with Marcus in the ship's greenhouse, where they had been tending to the plants. Tella had asked a simple question about how the humans grew their food, and Marcus had explained the importance of genetic diversity in their crops. But then she had shifted the subject, curious. "How do humans reproduce?" she asked, tilting her head slightly, her eyes narrowing in mild confusion. Marcus froze for a moment, caught off guard by the suddenness of the question. "Oh, well, it's complicated. We don't just grow new life like plants do. It involves a lot more than that." Tella blinked. "So it's not merely biological. There's more to it." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Yeah, it's kind of emotional too. Intimate, in a way." Her interest deepened. "Intimate? What does that mean?" Marcus chuckled nervously. "It means we form bonds with each other, strong connections. Sometimes those connections lead to reproduction." He stumbled over his words, unsure of how much detail to give. Tella absorbed this information with quiet thought. Later, she returned to her quarters and began her own research into human biology. The Averans were masters of biological engineering and had an extensive database of every known species. But now, she found herself digging deeper into human anatomy, hormones, and their complex reproduction system. She compared it to her own, efficient, streamlined, and entirely based on reproduction through telepathy and biological transfers. But humans, they needed something more. They needed physical closeness, touch, emotional connection. The more she read, the more curious she became. It wasn't just about making life. It was about making life together. A few days later, during one of their routine check-ins, Tella cornered Marcus again. They were in the ship's mess hall, sitting across from one another at a table, eating a light meal. Tella leaned forward slightly, her gaze fixed on Marcus with newfound intensity. "I have been studying human reproduction," she began. "It seems much more involved than what my species experiences. Why do humans rely on such physical acts to create new life?" Marcus took a bite of food, swallowing quickly. He glanced at her, unsure where this conversation was headed. "Well, it's not just about creating life. It's about creating something together, bonding, sharing something deeper than just biology." Tella's silver eyes shimmered with curiosity. "And this bonding, how do you humans achieve it?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, it's different for everyone. Sometimes it starts with small things, spending time together, talking, laughing, even just sitting quietly. Eventually, if the connection grows strong enough, it leads to something more intimate." Tella frowned slightly, processing this. "Intimacy," she repeated. This requires more than just physical contact, doesn't it? Yes, Marcus confirmed. It's about trust, mutual understanding, and care, something your people might not place much importance on. Tella looked down at her plate, deep in thought. The Avran society rarely focused on such things. Emotions, relationships, those were considered distractions from logical thinking and efficiency. Reproduction in her species was straightforward, controlled, necessary, and clean. The act itself was performed through shared telepathic resonance, with no emotional entanglements. It was simple, mechanical. But humans, they intertwined emotion with reproduction. The idea fascinated her. She wanted to understand it, experience it firsthand. The thought lingered in her mind. She began watching Marcus more closely, his expressions, his gestures, his subtle emotional responses. She noticed how humans often use touch in their interactions, patting a friend on the shoulder, clasping hands in greeting, leaning into each other for comfort. It was different from anything she had seen before. One evening, while walking together through the ship's quiet corridors, Tella finally brought it up again. "Marcus," she began, her voice soft but deliberate, "tell me more about this bonding you spoke of." Marcus, walking slightly ahead, paused and turned to face her, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I mean, how deeply does this bonding go?" Humans seem to place great value on it. Tella's gaze was steady, unyielding. "And once bonded, what happens next?" Marcus scratched his head, unsure of how to answer. "Well, once you're bonded, you start to feel connected to that person in a way that goes beyond just friendship. You trust them. You share things you wouldn't normally share with anyone else." Tella nodded slowly. "And this connection, it can lead to reproduction." Marcus hesitated, unsure of where this conversation was headed. "Yeah, it can. But it doesn't have to be just about reproduction. It's more about the connection itself and what two people build together." Tella's silver eyes gleamed thoughtfully. "Fascinating. Humans have made reproduction a thing of sharing, trust, and connection. I had not realized it was so complex." Marcus shrugged, not quite knowing how to explain it. "It's just how we are, Tella. It's about more than just making more people. It's about making something meaningful, together." Tella considered this, her mind whirling. She wanted to understand this more deeply, this human way of reproduction, of creating life in conjunction with emotion. It intrigued her, stirred something inside her that she couldn't quite explain. As they continued walking, Tella suddenly stopped and turned to Marcus. Her voice, calm but firm, held a new edge. "Marcus, may I try?" Marcus blinked. "Try what?" Tella took a step closer, her silver eyes locking onto his. "To experience human reproduction. I wish to understand it fully, this connection you spoke of." Marcus's face twisted in confusion. "Wait, you want to try that? Just to understand?" "Yes," Tella said, her tone unwavering. "It is the only way I will grasp it fully." Marcus's mind raced, unsure of how to respond. "Tella, that's not something you just try. It's something that happens between two people who have a real connection. It's not just an experiment." "I understand that," Tella replied, "but I wish to experience it, to feel it, to know what it means." Marcus stared at her, unsure of how to react. "This isn't something you can just decide like that. It's personal, intimate, and it's something that takes time." Tella remained calm. "Time or experience?" Marcus sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, Tella, this isn't something to rush into. It's something that comes when two people trust each other deeply. You can't just try it." But Tella's curiosity wasn't so easily satisfied, and as she turned away, walking toward the ship's observation deck, a thought began to take root in her mind. If understanding humans required more than just observation, perhaps she could find out what made them so different. Experience it for herself. And so, Her fascination with human reproduction grew deeper. The desire to understand it became something more, something she couldn't ignore. The Nova glider was a place of constant motion, technicians rushing from one task to another, scientists poring over data, and crew members exchanging stories and experiences from across the galaxy. For Tella, it was overwhelming at first. Her Avran upbringing had conditioned her to value efficiency above all else, but humans seemed to find purpose in things she once thought were distractions, small joys, laughter, shared moments. One evening, the crew gathered in the ship's recreation lounge for a cultural exchange. It was part of their ongoing effort to build trust with Tella and introduce her to human customs. Marcus, ever the informal host, walked over to where she stood near the refreshments table. "Hey," he said with a friendly grin. "Ready to see a bit more of what humans do for fun?" Tella glanced at him, her expression neutral but curious. "Fun," she repeated. "I've observed your games and entertainment. It seems chaotic, but I don't understand why it is valued." Marcus chuckled. "It's not just about chaos. It's about connection. We share moments with each other through these things, whether it's playing games, dancing, or just talking." He extended a hand. "Come on. Let me show you how we do it." Tella hesitated for a moment, unsure. But curiosity tugged at her. She didn't want to simply watch anymore. She wanted to experience this strange way humans connected. Slowly, she placed her hand in Marcus's and followed him toward the center of the room. As they reached the makeshift dance floor, music began to play, a lively mix of beats, rhythm, and vibrant sounds that pulsed through the air. The other crew members moved instinctively, swaying and stepping in time. "This is a dance?" Tella asked, raising an eyebrow. "It seems so. Free form." Marcus grinned. "That's the point. We move however we feel. No rules, no expectations. Just expressing ourselves." Tella observed the fluid motions, watching how the humans flowed together, some with confidence, others shy but still moving to the beat. She noticed the way they laughed, how they leaned into each other's space, exchanging smiles. It was strange, yet somehow mesmerizing. "I'm supposed to move?" Tella asked, looking slightly uncomfortable. Her body was built for precision, not for spontaneous movement like this. Marcus chuckled. "Yeah, you don't have to be perfect. Just feel the music." He reached out and gently placed his hands on her shoulders. "Just follow my lead." For a moment, Tella hesitated, but then she allowed herself to move, letting the beat pulse through her as Marcus guided her steps. Her movements were stiff at first, awkward, and unsure, but slowly she began to loosen up. Her long limbs swayed slightly to the rhythm, and she found herself laughing softly as she mirrored Marcus's simple turns. "You're getting it," Marcus said with a grin. "See, it's not so bad." Tella paused and looked at him, her silver eyes shining with faint amusement. "It is different, strange, yet freeing. I had no idea humans could find expression this way." "Yeah, it's part of who we are," Marcus replied. "We use music and movement to connect, to share emotions. It's a big part of who we are as a species." As they danced, Tella began to notice something more. It wasn't just the movements, it was the emotions behind them. Humans didn't simply dance for fun. They danced to feel, to share joy, excitement, or even sadness. It was another way they expressed what was inside them. "Do all humans enjoy this?" she asked, observing the other crew members. Marcus shrugged. "Not everyone, but a lot of us do. Dancing's a way to let loose, to connect with each other. It helps us bond." Tella's eyes narrowed slightly, processing his words. "Bonding? Is that another way you share connection?" Marcus chuckled. "Yeah, it's kind of what humans do. We find ways to connect, whether it's through dance, conversation, shared experiences. It's what makes us feel alive." Tella tilted her head thoughtfully. "Alive," she murmured. "You humans seem to seek life in many ways, through emotions, physicality, even moments like this. Marcus smiled, enjoying her interest. Yeah, we do. And you know what? It's worth it. These moments, dancing, sharing experiences, they make life richer. As they continued, Marcus suddenly paused mid-step and looked at her. Hey, want to try something else? Tella raised an eyebrow. What? Ever played one of our games? Marcus asked with a sly grin. Tella blinked, slightly puzzled. Games? What purpose do they serve? They're fun, sure, but they're also great for learning about each other. Come on, it'll be fun. Before Tella could object, Marcus gently pulled her toward a group gathered around a holo table where a fast-paced strategy game was being played. The crew members around the table were laughing, animated, and fully engaged in the match. Tella watched, curious but skeptical. This looks chaotic. Marcus chuckled. It's supposed to be. It's all about thinking on your feet, making quick decisions, and of course, trying to outsmart your opponents. Tella crossed her arms, watching carefully. It seems childish. Why do humans spend time on such things? Well, it's not just about winning, Marcus explained. Games like these help us practice teamwork, quick thinking, and strategy. It's how we connect. Plus, it's fun to challenge yourself every now and then. Tella raised a brow. Challenge yourself. Yeah. It keeps us sharp, keeps our minds active. And hey, sometimes it's just good to blow off some steam. She watched as the crew members at the table laughed and joked, teasing one another between moves. The camaraderie among them intrigued her. How they didn't seem to play for pure victory, but for the shared experience. I see now. These games are more than just entertainment, Tella said slowly. They are bonding activities. Exactly, Marcus said with a nod. They're one of the ways we build connections. Tella considered this, her mind absorbing what Marcus had said. Humans found connection not just in work or conversation, but in their cultural activities, in dancing, in playful games, and even in the smallest shared moments. As the evening wore on, Tella found herself drawn further into the human world, soaking in their customs, their behaviors, and the subtle ways they formed bonds. It was clear to her now. Humanity didn't just live for survival. They lived for the experience of it. They created meaning through connection, laughter, and shared moments, building something greater than themselves. And for the first time, Tella began to wonder, could this way of living help her understand more than she ever thought possible? Tella had been on the Nova glider for a few weeks now, and with each passing day, her fascination with human behavior grew. She had studied their technology, their culture, and their intricate social connections. But there was one thing she couldn't ignore: their physical touch. Humans seemed to use touch so freely, whether in greetings, comfort, or simple interactions. It was something her avian species avoided. Physical touch wasn't necessary in their world. Everything they did was clean, efficient, and precise. Yet here, humans seemed to seek connection through touch, even in casual situations. She had witnessed it countless times. Two crew members casually patting each other on the back, friends holding hands, partners leaning into each other, even brief touches during laughter. It fascinated her, yet it puzzled her as well. Why was physical touch such an integral part of their lives? One evening, Tella found herself in the observation deck, alone, gazing at the stars. The Nova glider drifted silently through space, and for once, she allowed herself to think more deeply about what she had learned. The humans, with their complex ways of connecting, through emotions, conversation, games, and yes, even touch, seemed to live in a way that felt more alive, more whole. But something else lingered in her mind, the desire to experience it, to understand what it truly meant when humans reached out to each other, even when no words were spoken. What does it feel like? Tella whispered to herself, watching the stars as if they held the answer. What does it mean when they touch? The question wouldn't leave her. Tella knew that to understand humanity fully, She had to go beyond observation. She had to feel it, experience it firsthand, and there was only one way to do that. The next day, she saw out Marcus. They had spent many hours together, talking, working side by side, and even dancing at crew gatherings. But she knew Marcus as someone she could trust, not just as a crewmate, but someone with whom she felt comfortable. She found him in the ship's maintenance bay, deep in the middle of calibrating a sensor relay. He glanced up as she approached, his expression shifting from focused to surprised. "Tella," Marcus said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "What's up?" Tella took a breath, gathering her thoughts. "I've been observing humans, Marcus. How they connect with each other, how they form bonds." She paused, meeting his gaze. "And I want to know what it feels like, to be touched." Marcus blinked, taken aback. "T touched." His face flushed slightly. "You mean physically?" "Yes." Tella's silver eyes held steady, calm yet curious. "I've watched how humans use touch to communicate. I want to experience it, to feel what it means." Marcus swallowed, feeling a strange mixture of surprise and caution. "Tella, you don't have to." "I want to," she interrupted softly. "I believe it will help me understand. Help me understand humans and their way of living." Marcus scratched his head, unsure of how to respond. This isn't something you just jump into. It's intimate." "I know." Tella finished his sentence with a steady voice. "And I'm willing to experience it." Marcus hesitated, his mind spinning. He didn't know if this was something he should be involved in, especially with someone like Tella, who wasn't just curious, but driven to understand. Still, something about her determined gaze made him pause. "All right," he finally said. "If you're sure, but it has to be mutual. It can't be forced." "I understand," Tella replied. "It must be something we both agree on." That evening, they found themselves in one of the ship's quieter areas, tucked away in the crew lounge. The lights were dim, casting a soft glow over the room, and the hum of activity outside faded into the background. Tella sat on one of the chairs, her posture straight and composed, but there was a flicker of anticipation in her eyes. Marcus sat down across from her, his heart pounding slightly, half from nerves, half from something else. "So," Marcus began, clearing his throat, "what exactly do you want to experience?" Tella thought carefully before answering. "I want to feel what it means to be touched, gently, comfortably, not out of need, but out of trust." Marcus nodded slowly. "All right, we can try that. I'll keep it simple, something casual, something safe." He leaned forward slightly, his voice lowering. "Are you sure about this?" "Yes." Tella's voice was steady. "I want to feel it." Marcus reached out slowly, his hand hovering just above hers. He wasn't sure how she'd react, but he wanted to ease into it gently. Gently, he rested his palm against hers, his fingers brushing softly against her skin. The touch was light, tentative, almost unsure. It wasn't forceful, and it wasn't meant to overwhelm. It was simply there. Tella's silver eyes widened slightly as she felt it. The warmth of his hand, the subtle pulse of his touch. It was different from anything she had experienced before. There was a softness to it, a calm that lingered beneath the surface. "I feel it," Tella whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's subtle, yet it stirs something inside me." Marcus kept his hand in place, slowly giving her space to adjust. "That's touch. Humans use it to connect, to show care, to share feelings." Tella closed her eyes for a moment, letting the sensation settle. She had thought touch would be mechanical, cold, transactional. But this was something more. It had a warmth, an emotion. And as she sat there, with Marcus's hand gently resting on hers, she began to understand, really understand, what humans meant when they sought physical connection. It wasn't just touch for touch's sake. It was meaningful. It was intentional. And for Tella, it was the start of something more. Tella couldn't stop thinking about the touch, the soft, tentative connection between her and Marcus. It had stirred something deep within her, something she hadn't expected. It wasn't just the physical sensation, but the emotions that followed. The warmth, the trust, the faint spark of something unfamiliar. Since that evening, Tella had found herself increasingly drawn to those subtle connections, the way humans use touch to communicate, to express themselves. It was everywhere she looked. Casual handshakes, comforting pats on the shoulder, even fleeting brushes between friends. It seemed to be woven into the very fabric of human interaction. And now she wanted to understand more. She wanted to see if touch could truly become more than just a gesture. It could become something deeper, something that spoke of trust, companionship, and intimacy. One evening, Tella made her way to the ship's observation deck again. The stars were vast and mesmerizing, casting their light across the galaxy beyond. She leaned against the railing, watching as the vast expanse of space shimmered with distant planets and swirling nebulae. But tonight, it wasn't the stars that held her attention. It was the memory of what she had felt before. A soft presence approached from behind, a familiar figure. Marcus. "Hey," he said softly, standing a few steps away, giving her space. His voice was gentle, his eyes watching her carefully. "Can we talk?" Tella turned slightly, nodding. "Yes, I've been thinking a lot about what we talked about before." Marcus stepped closer, his expression curious. "And I want to explore this more," she admitted quietly. "Not just touch, but what it can become. I want to experience it fully." Marcus blinked, surprised. "You mean more than just casual touches?" "Yes." Tella's silver eyes locked on his. "I want to understand what deeper connection feels like. What it means when two people truly reach out to each other, not out of instinct, but out of mutual need, mutual trust." Marcus swallowed, feeling his heart quicken. He had anticipated this, but hearing her voice so sure made it real. "I'm not sure if I'm the right person to help you with this," he admitted. "This isn't something small. It's personal." "I trust you," Tella said firmly. "I've observed your actions, your behavior. You've shown me patience and respect, and I want you to guide me in this." For a moment, Marcus hesitated, unsure. He had never imagined being the one to guide someone through such an intimate experience. But something about Tella's sincerity, her genuine desire to understand, made him pause. "All right," he said finally, his voice steady. "If you're sure, but we take this slow. We have to be sure this is what both of us want." "I understand." Tella's gaze never wavered. "I'm ready." They moved toward the central lounge, where the lighting was soft and dim. It created a sense of intimacy without being too overwhelming. Tella took a seat on one of the couches, her posture calm but open. Marcus joined her, sitting a comfortable distance away, giving them both room to breathe. "Now," Marcus began, "this isn't going to be the same as before. It's going to be more deliberate, more meaningful." "I understand," Tella repeated, watching him. "What do we do?" Marcus took a breath. "We start with touch again. But this time, it's going to be intentional. We'll both communicate through it, what we feel, what we need." Tella nodded, absorbing his words. She wasn't sure exactly what to expect, but she trusted him. Slowly, Marcus extended his hand. This time, his touch wasn't tentative, it was deliberate. His fingers hovered gently over her hand, waiting for her response. Tella's silver eyes flickered, then she reached out, placing her hand beneath his. The warmth from his touch spread immediately, calming yet awakening something inside her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forced. It was deliberate, meaningful. "This," Marcus murmured, "this is how we begin. Touch that speaks, calm, comfort, trust." Tella absorbed his words, allowing herself to feel what his touch conveyed. It wasn't just warmth. It was a steady presence, one that offered support and stability. Her breath caught slightly as she felt it, the connection between them growing, shifting from mere touch to something more intimate. "Feel it?" Marcus asked softly. "Yes," Tella whispered. "It's different. There's something beneath it. Not just physical, something deeper." "Exactly," Marcus said. "Touch can be a bridge. It can show what words sometimes can't. It can bring comfort, and sometimes it can bring something more." Tella closed her eyes, breathing in the sensation. The touch wasn't fleeting. It was steady, patient, as though time itself had slowed down. Her thoughts began to drift, and for the first time, she allowed herself to relax into the feeling, not just as an observer, but as someone experiencing it. "Do you feel what I mean?" Marcus asked, his voice barely audible. "I do," Tella murmured. "It's intense, but it brings clarity." Marcus smiled softly. "Good. This is the beginning. Letting touch be more than just a gesture. Let it speak for what words sometimes cannot." Their hands remained together, the connection deepening slowly as they communicated in silence, through the subtle pressure, the gentle brushes, and the steady gaze shared between them. It was a bond growing, one touch at a time, a connection that reached beyond what either had imagined. And in that moment, Tella knew she was unlocking something profound, about humanity, and about herself. As the days passed, Tella found herself thinking about the connection she shared with Marcus more often. Their moments together, those quiet touches, the steady gaze, had awakened something deep within her, something she couldn't easily dismiss. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It felt significant. Humans, she had learned, thrived on these bonds, on the sharing of emotions, the intimate gestures that went beyond mere physical touch. And now she was beginning to understand why it was so important to them. It wasn't just about connection. It was about creating something meaningful, something that built trust and intimacy over time. One evening, Tella stood in the ship's communal garden, staring at the small, glowing flowers that surrounded her. The air was filled with the faint scent of blooming plants and the soft hum of life from the crew members moving through the space. It was peaceful, yet her mind buzzed with questions, with thoughts that refused to leave her alone. What was it that Marcus had shown her? A connection that wasn't just physical, but something that could linger, something that could speak without words. She had always prided herself on her precision, on her ability to control her surroundings and emotions. But now she was beginning to wonder if there was something beyond control, a deeper feeling that humans seemed to embrace without fear. "Tella." Marcus's voice broke into her thoughts, calm and familiar. He had found her once again, sensing that she was lost in her own mind. She turned slightly, offering a small smile. "Marcus," she greeted softly. "I've been thinking." "I can see that," he said with a gentle chuckle. "You look deep in thought." Tella exhaled slowly, letting her silver eyes meet his. "About what you showed me. About what you helped me feel." Marcus raised an eyebrow, his expression neutral but attentive. "You've been thinking about it?" "Yes." Tella nodded, crossing her arms. "It's more than just touch. It's something more profound. Humans seem to find meaning in these connections, something that transcends the physical." Marcus leaned in slightly, his voice quiet but intrigued. "Transcends the physical. What do you mean by that?" Tella's mind worked furiously as she tried to find the right words. "It's not just about the sensation. It's about what comes from it. How touch can create trust, intimacy. It's not merely physical. It's something that builds between two people over time." Marcus smiled gently. "That's true. Touch can be fleeting, but when it's shared with meaning, it becomes something more lasting. It helps us feel connected, valued." "I want to understand it," Tella said slowly, her voice serious. "Not just from an observation standpoint, but from experiencing it. I want to explore it fully." Marcus's brow furrowed slightly. "Tella, this isn't something you take lightly. Touch, meaningful touch, can change things. It's intimate, and once you step into it, there's no going back. I know, she replied softly, but I feel it. There's something here, something I need to explore. Marcus studied her for a moment, sensing her determination. He could see she wasn't simply curious anymore. This was more than an academic interest. It was something personal, something deep within her that needed to be explored. All right, he finally said, his voice steady. But we have to be careful. Boundaries have to be clear, mutual, and respected at every step. This is a journey, and it's one we'll walk together. Tella nodded again, her expression firm. Yes, I want this. We can build this connection together. That evening, they sat together once again, this time in one of the ship's quiet corners, away from the hustle and bustle of the crew. The lights were dim, casting a soft glow that set the perfect atmosphere. They both knew what was coming. What lay between them now was no longer simply an experiment, but something that felt real. Marcus extended his hand once more, and this time, Tella didn't hesitate. She reached out and placed her palm beneath his, the warmth returning, steady and familiar. It begins with touch again, Marcus murmured. But this time, it's different. It's more. Feel it. Tella closed her eyes, letting herself focus on the connection. The subtle pressure of Marcus's hand against hers. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't overwhelming. It was steady, patient, and full of meaning. She could feel the sincerity behind it, the warmth that seemed to communicate something deeper than mere skin-to-skin contact. As they sat there in silence, the bond between them grew stronger, not just through touch, but through the stillness, through the silent exchange of understanding. Marcus didn't move quickly, and neither did Tella. They let the moment linger, giving each other space to feel, to absorb what was happening. Do you feel it? Marcus asked quietly, his voice calm. Yes, Tella whispered. It's peaceful, but it stirs something inside me. There's something deeper here, something that reaches into my mind, my heart. Marcus smiled gently, pleased to see how she responded. That's connection. True connection. It doesn't just reside in touch. It resides in trust, in understanding. I want more, Tella confessed, her voice steady but soft. I want to feel what it means to be close to someone, to share more than just touch, to build something real. Marcus's expression softened further. Then we take it one step at a time. Every touch will build upon the last. Every moment will add meaning. It's a journey, Tella, but it can lead to something greater. As they sat in the quiet of that moment, Marcus and Tella both knew that something had changed. Something had begun to shift between them. This wasn't just a simple exploration anymore. This was something deeper, something that had the potential to bind them in ways neither had anticipated. And as they leaned toward each other once more, they both felt it, the promise of something more, something intimate, something real. The days had turned into nights, and Tella and Marcus had found themselves walking a path neither of them had anticipated. Their interactions, once cautious and deliberate, had deepened in a way neither could ignore. What had started as mere curiosity had blossomed into something far more meaningful, an undeniable connection built on trust, respect, and the shared experience of physical touch. For Tella, every touch now felt different. It was no longer just something to observe, something to learn about. It was something she craved, something that made her feel alive in a way she never had before. She could feel the subtle shift in her own body, the way her heart quickened when their hands met, the warmth that spread when Marcus's fingers lingered just a little longer. And Marcus, he had felt it too. At first, it had been difficult to gauge just how far this would go, unsure if it would remain casual or if something deeper would emerge. But now, he found himself looking forward to these moments, these quiet exchanges, where they could be close, truly close, not just physically, but emotionally. It was late in the evening when Tella made her way to the lounge, where Marcus had found his usual quiet moment of solitude. She walked softly, her footsteps light, as if the weight of her decision had settled quietly in her chest. Tonight, she wanted something more, something that would solidify their connection, something that would leave no doubts. When she found him, Marcus was seated by one of the large windows, staring out into the expanse of space. He turned slightly as he sensed her presence, his eyes meeting hers, a subtle smile playing at his lips. "Tella." "Marcus," she replied, her voice steady but soft. "I've been thinking about us." Marcus tilted his head, curious. "What have you been thinking?" "I want to take this further." Tella's eyes were unwavering, intense with determination. "Not just through touch, but through everything. I want to explore what it means to be close, to be connected beyond just physical sensations." Marcus's expression softened as he listened. He could see the sincerity in her eyes, the conviction behind her words. This wasn't about curiosity anymore. This was something more profound. "If you're sure," Marcus said, his voice gentle but careful, "then we can explore it together. But we take it slowly. We communicate with each other every step of the way. No expectations, no assumptions, just mutual understanding." "Yes," Tella agreed. "I trust you, Marcus. I want to feel more than just touch." Marcus smiled, warmth lighting up his features. "Then let's start." They sat down together, once again in a quiet corner of the ship, where the dim lighting cast a peaceful glow. Tella sat calmly, her legs crossed, and her silver eyes fixed on Marcus. This wasn't about simply learning. This was about truly experiencing something together. Marcus reached out first, but this time, his touch wasn't hesitant. It was deliberate, firm yet gentle. His hand rested softly on Tella's own, fingers intertwined, but he didn't press too hard. He gave her space to respond, to guide the moment. "Feel it," Marcus murmured, his voice low, soothing. "This is connection. It's not just the physical. It's everything. It's trust. It's shared energy. It's a feeling that grows with each touch." Tella closed her eyes, letting herself absorb the sensation. The warmth of Marcus's hand spread through her, soothing and grounding. But there was more than just the touch. It was the intent behind it, the understanding shared between them. She could feel the exchange happening, not just through skin, but through something deeper. "It's different," Tella whispered, her voice barely audible. "It feels like more than I expected." "Yes," Marcus agreed. "That's the beauty of it. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, when you share fully, it becomes something that goes beyond what you thought was possible." Tella opened her eyes, her gaze steady on Marcus. "I'm ready to explore more, to let this connection build between us. Not just in touch, but in everything." Marcus smiled, pleased by her openness. "Good. Then we take the next step, moving beyond just physical touch. We'll communicate through more than that." As he spoke, Marcus leaned slightly toward her, and Tella didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned back slightly into the couch, inviting the closeness. Marcus's eyes lingered on hers before his gaze shifted down to her lips. He tilted his head slightly, and without hesitation, he leaned in, brushing his lips gently against hers. It wasn't hurried. It wasn't forceful. It was slow, deliberate, and filled with meaning. Tella felt it immediately, the warmth of his lips, the softness, the subtle connection. It wasn't just a kiss. It was an extension of what they had been building, an acknowledgement of everything that had come before. The kiss deepened slightly, but still with care, as if both were measuring the space between them, ensuring it was safe and wanted. Tella responded, allowing herself to feel what it meant, to be close in a way she hadn't before. And as they pulled apart, their foreheads resting lightly together, Tella felt something shift inside her, a clarity, a new understanding. "This is more than I expected," she whispered. "Yes," Marcus said, his voice calm and soothing. "It's more, Tella, and it's something that we build together, something that grows over time." Tella let out a breath she hadn't realized she had been holding. For the first time, she truly felt connected, not just through touch, but through shared energy, shared emotions. She had crossed a threshold, one that had once seemed distant, unattainable, but now it felt real. They sat in silence for a moment, simply absorbing what had transpired. And in that quiet, they both knew. What had begun as simple curiosity had blossomed into something much deeper. This was no longer just an experiment. This was a real connection, a bond that had the potential to grow into something beautiful, something lasting.